It started like any other night at my cousin Cassidy's house, laughing, running around, and feeling the thrill of being with family. But by the end of the night, everything changed. Our family bond was put to the test by something dark and terrifying lurking just beyond the trees. I'd stayed at Cassidy's house countless times. We weren't blood relatives, but our families were so close that it felt like we were. This time, I was spending the night with all my cousins, 11 of us in total, 6 boys and 5 girls. The boys claimed the sunroom, while us girls bunked in the toy room at the back of the house. The toy room had a door that led straight into the backyard, which was the perfect spot for hours of trampoline jumps and swing set races. But behind our little backyard, past the 300 meters of open space, was a dense forest that separated Cassidy's house from her creepy neighbor's place. The man who lived there, let's call him Mr. Gray, was known for being unsettling. He'd always appear in the woods whenever we played outside, popping up out of nowhere like a shadow, and always with that same weird smile. "Hey there, ladies," he'd say, his voice slithering through the air. "Is your dad home? I baked some cookies. You want some?" Our parents had warned us about him. Cassidy's dad had already had a few conversations with him after Mr. Gray got too aggressive. But still, there was something about him that felt off, something none of us could explain, but all of us felt deep down. One evening, after an epic Nerf war, we were outside bouncing on the trampoline when we heard something rustling in the bushes. At first, I thought it might be a deer, or maybe a coyote, but Cassidy was the first to get nervous. "It's probably nothing," she whispered, but I wasn't so sure. So, I called out into the dark, "Who's out there?" Nothing. Complete silence. Then, out of nowhere, that strange whistling sound echoed through the air. It wasn't an animal, it was a human. I looked at Cassidy, and she looked at me. A chill ran down my spine. We didn't stick around. We hustled back inside, too spooked to even talk about it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching us. Later, as we watched a teen movie, which I hated, by the way, I kept glancing out the window. Something didn't feel right. I kept seeing strange flashes of light near the woods. Could it be Mr. Gray again? By the time the movie ended, most of the girls had fallen asleep, but Cassidy and I were still awake, chatting quietly. That's when we saw it, a shadow near the trampoline. "Is that your dad?" I whispered. Cassidy shook her head. "No way." Then, through the quiet night, came that unmistakable whistling sound again. Thinking one of the boys was messing with us, we went to their room, only to find them all absorbed in a soccer game, oblivious to our concerns. "You guys weren't outside, right?" I asked, but they looked at us like we were crazy. They hadn't moved. We turned back to the toy room, and that's when we saw him, Mr. Gray, standing outside the window, smiling that awful grin. He was holding something shiny in his hand, a box cutter, and he was trying to rip open the fly screen. I froze. Time stopped. Then Cassidy screamed, a blood-curdling shriek that could have shattered glass. The boys came running, followed by Cassidy's parents. Her dad bolted out the door with a weapon in hand, while her mom called the police. When Cassidy's dad came back, he was grim-faced. In the exact spot where we had heard the rustling earlier, he found rope, duct tape, a lighter, and even a whip. Mr. Gray had been planning something, and we had no idea what. But thanks to Cassidy's dad acting fast, he was arrested and eventually convicted. What would you do if you heard something run across your roof in the dead of night? Not just the sound of footsteps, no. Something huge, something wild, and you have no idea what it is. Would you hide, run, or just freeze in terror. I'm from Costa Rica, a small but mysterious country tucked away in Central America. Like many places with deep-rooted history, we have our share of legends. Some are just stories, but others might just be real. One such legend is about a creature, an ancient witch or devil's wife, who steals the skins of animals to gain their powers. It's said that these beings can shapeshift into whatever creature they steal the skin from. But there's a catch. They never quite get it right. Something's always off. It's almost like a monster wearing a mask that doesn't quite fit. Think of it as a flesh and bone version of a skinwalker, but twisted in its own way. When I was 14, my family lived on a farm. It was a beautiful, quiet place, surrounded by trees and open land. My grandparents from the U.S. loved it there so much that they decided to build a vacation home on the property. It was attached to our house, separated only by a porch. They didn't visit often, so I convinced them to let me use the master bedroom of their house as my room. As the eldest, I figured it was my right, and I always had trouble sleeping, so why not? It was late one night when it happened. The kind of night where the silence hangs heavy in the air, and the only sounds are the rustling of the wind and the occasional animal stirring in the brush. I was in my new room, alone, with a window cracked open, since it was one of those crisp, cool nights. The house was empty, except for me. I remember feeling restless, like something was watching me, even though the farm was isolated. There were trees, but none close enough for anything to jump from. Then, suddenly, thud. It sounded like something heavy had just landed on the roof, right above my parents' room. I froze. A second later, I heard it. Something running across the roof. Fast! So fast that I could feel the entire structure shaking beneath the force. The sound was deafening, so loud that I thought the roof might cave in. My heart raced in my chest. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The sound came closer, louder, until whatever it was reached my window. The air felt thick with terror. Then I heard it. The thing was clawing at the screen. I didn't even dare to look. I already knew. Whatever it wasn't human. I could hear it breathing, low and feral. Then, the thing screeched. It wasn't a howl. It wasn't a growl. It was something in between, raw and primal. I slammed my window shut, locking it as quickly as I could. My hands were shaking, my legs like jelly. I backed away, my breath shallow. I didn't even stop to think. I ran straight to the bathroom and locked myself in, not daring to go anywhere near the window again. I stayed in that bathroom the entire night, listening to the thing clawing at my room, trying to get inside. And then, finally, when morning came, I heard it. The silence. The creature had vanished. The first thing I did was ask my parents if they'd heard anything. They hadn't. Of course they hadn't. They slept soundly, unaware of the nightmare I'd just experienced. When I went outside to check the window, I found it. The screen was torn almost completely off. Something huge had tried to get in, and I couldn't explain what it was. My mind raced as I thought about the shape of it, the claws, the feline face, the way it had screeched. Nothing in the world could explain that. That day, I moved all my things back to my old room, the one I shared with my little sister. I was done with that master bedroom. I didn't even care about getting in trouble for the destroyed screen. I just wanted to feel safe again. To this day, I don't know what I encountered on that roof. I only know one thing. It wasn't human. And it wasn't just an animal either. I've heard of the stories about witches and skin stealers, but now I believe them. Some things in this world aren't meant to be explained. So, thanks for stopping by our little campsite here at Outdoor Terrors. Until next time, I'll see you soon, when the campfire blazes once again.